Hey guys, welcome back. Finally, here's part 2 of painting the engine bay on my Camaro. So as you can see, I got it started on stripping down the paint. I came to the conclusion I'm not going to strip the whole bay down. I'm just going to do the firewall and this wheel side, this wheel well side that the primer wasn't sticking to very well. I went ahead and I hit the core support and this side of the bay with 320 grit. I sanded down the little crack spot here. This is all fine. I'm not going to touch it, so that's staying the way it is. I do have to finish over here on the firewall, obviously. I just threw a little on there just to see what it did. This area, for the most part, is pretty much done. I hit it with the stripper. I used Rust-Oleum aircraft remover stripper. Then I hit it with steel wool, cleaned it all off. I still have to go and hit it with the orbital sander and 180 grit just to smooth everything out, smooth out the frame rails. Then I'll go hit it with self-etching primer, and I'm going to end up priming the whole bay over again, even though I'm not stripping this side down. I mean, if I had like a garage, if I had time to do it, I would love to just pull the motor out, you know, leave the car down, strip everything down to the bare metal. But like I said before, this isn't a show car. I do not have the space to do that. You can also see, I didn't mention in my last update video, but I did go and I pulled the booster out just because there was too much area in here I couldn't reach. I also went and I pulled out the clutch master, which I have over here, so that wasn't too bad to get out. I know getting the top clip on here, that's a pain in the ass. I remember that now when I was pulling it out, but it came out really quick. I had it out in maybe like 10 minutes. So right now I'm going to get back to stripping the paint off the firewall here, start sanding everything down, get it all cleaned up, and then hope to get some 2K primer on this thing. So I got the base stripped down, I got Pour 15 applied over all the rust areas. I sanded it down the best I could, and then any little spot where I still see some rust, I put some Pour 15 on it. So this stuff is going to keep the rust away, encapsulate it. It's not going to get any worse. It went all along the seam there on the firewall. Right now I'm going to hit the whole bay with the Scotch-Brite. I'm going to Scotch-Brite all the Pour 15. This is pretty level. I might have to sand it a little bit to get it to blend in so it's, you don't like see the spots that were hit with the Pour 15. But right now I'm going to set up the camera. I'm going to hit it with the Scotch-Brite, see how it comes out, and then I'll go from there, decide if I want to sand this down anymore. Alright, so I went ahead, I sanded the bay down with some 120 grit, then I hit it with the Scotch-Brite, got all the Pour 15 smoothed out, got into all the little nooks and crannies, everything's smooth, looks good. I went and hit the bay with compressed air, all the dust is out. Now I'm going to go wipe everything down with soap and water and like a terry towel, make sure I dry it so the bare steel doesn't flash rust. Then I'll come in with a microfiber cloth and some wax and grease remover and clean the whole bay down with that. Then I should be ready to mask the car off. I'll throw a drop cloth over it, mask off the fenders, probably either mask off or wrap drop cloth around the hood. And then I should be ready to once again spray it down with self-etch primer. So I got the car all masked off. I got the engine bay cleaned up. I went and I took the hood off. Car is covered. Right now I'm going to wipe down the bay with wax and grease remover, and then I'll start spraying. Now I'm first going to be using self-etching primer. Now this is going to be applied to all the areas that are bare metal, so mostly the firewall, this wheel well over here, any little areas I'm going to go around here, whatever I have left. And then depending on how much of the stuff I have left, I might just go over the whole bay just so it's all one color. And then I'm going to come in, once this dries, this has a 20-minute drying time before you can top coat it. So I'll let this dry for about a half hour, come back, and then I'm going to start shooting the 2K high build primer. Alright guys, so this is where I'm at right now. I just finished putting 3 wet coats of high build primer on here. Primer stuck beautifully. It filled in all the little sanding scratches and all the marks where the pore 15 were. Came out great. This stuff is nice and thick, filled in all those imperfections. I got great coverage. I also did under the hood over here. So I gotta check what the wait time on this is before I can apply base coat, and then I'll get to spraying some color. so this will give you an idea of what it looks like in the daytime. So basically, I was having a problem with the gun. I'm using like one of those $15 Purple Harbor Freight spray guns. I've used them before in the past with no problems. Well, I can't say no problems. Really, they either work or they don't. And when I was actually prepping the car for paint, I used the same type of gun when I was laying down the epoxy primer and the high build primer when I was getting everything block sanded. And it worked really well. I didn't have any problems with it. It wasn't clogging up. The biggest thing that I'm noticing with the guns that actually happens is that they leak out of the top and they leak out of the handle. Just to give you an idea what I'm talking about, here's the actual gun I was using. Now I had two of these things. One of them I'd use just for primer, and then the other one I'll use for base coat. But I mean, these are so cheap. Usually I'll just like end up just throwing it away and just buying another one. But the one that I was using for the primer was working so well, I was cleaning it out and I kept using it over and over. So when I was actually doing this bay, I went to Harbor Freight. I got another one of these, a brand new one, just to spray the base coat with. Took it apart, cleaned it all out, and then as I was spraying it, first problem I ran into is that the paint was coming out the top here. So if you notice, when I first started spraying this, immediately I had to come over here and I started wiping down over here because the paint was actually dripping out of the top of this and onto the primer. So that was the first strike against it. And then after I had that figured out, I ended up, I tightened this down as much as I could, and then I ended up throwing a glove over the top just to keep it from, the paint from coming out, and then the paint will go into the glove. But after that was taken care of, then I started having paint leaking out where the needle is in here. And that was just running down my hand and threatening to get onto the paint. So that was another strike. And then once all that was figured out, I went over and I switched to my primer gun because it was just leaking everywhere. I had a rag wrapped around the thing. I said, screw this. I went and I got my primer gun, cleaned it out really good, put a base coat in that, was spraying with that, no problem. The top wasn't leaking, everything was good, and then it started clogging up on me. So I had to stop in the middle of the paint job, clean the needle out, you know, put it back together, continue spraying. But after I cleaned it that one time, then I didn't have a problem. But yeah, as far as the, not so much the cleaning, but just leaking out of the top here and leaking through where the trigger is. Those are like the biggest problems I see with these guns. The other thing is you'll hear just air will be like coming out of here. It'll be leaking air through the same thing, like through the handle, like under here. So yeah, they're really not great. I mean, if they work great for $15. Usually you'll know right away once you hook the thing up, it'll work like absolute crap. It'll be leaking air, it'll be leaking paint, and you'll know just you got a dud. So overall, I don't do enough painting to really buy a high quality gun. I probably will in the future if I keep doing stuff like this, but for what I needed, I'm glad I had my primer gun back up because that got the job done. So then as far as this area goes over here, like I was saying, I was having problems with the gun. The trigger was also sticking at a certain point. So right when I was trying to get in here, it was just laying down the paint really, really thick. So you can see I have these like little crinkly lines in the finish. I got them on the strut tower over here. I got a little on the frame here. And then there's just like random little spots over here in this in the passenger side battery tray. Which it's no biggie. I mean, I let it dry. The high spots just flake right off, so I'm just going to hit it with a plastic razor blade, get them nice and flat, then I'm going to feather it in with maybe 320 grit. That's no problem. Everything else came out flawless, so that was the only area that had a problem where the paint went on way too thick. The hood is finished. Hood's already cleared, so that's all finished. I just have to come in here and touch up. When I'm touching up over here, I'm going to spray in here because you can see there's a primer there I couldn't get to when I had the hood upside down painting it off the car. So I just have to touch up in there. I mean, there's a few little spots like in there too, but really nothing too big. So I'm gonna hit that once I'm touching all that up. And I also went ahead, I painted the hinges for the hood. I actually bought new shocks because I lost the clips for these, plus they gotta like paint all over them. I don't feel like cleaning them off. I got a new set for like 15 bucks, so I'm just gonna throw them on there. I taped off the strut mounts. These are actually going to be black, so I didn't feel like wasting paint on them for no reason. The primer's under there. I'll peel the paint off, spray them with like trim black, same as the hood hinges. And I mean, that's really it. So I'm gonna wrap up part 2 here. Look out for part 3 because that's when I'm actually gonna clear this thing and then start getting everything back together.